had been convicted to stand at a busy junction in Cleveland, Ohio, in order to be shamed for reckless driving. As you can see, her the poster that she keeps up or down here tells you what kind of crime she has committed. She drove on the sidewalk in order to avoid a school bus. And for any of you who are familiar with American customs and conventions, this is really considered a major crime. You have to stop behind a school bus and stop and wait until the last child has either left the school bus or entered the school or hopped on the school bus, and then the stop sign disappears, the bus moves, and you can move as well. That's what she has not done. She just passed the bus on the sidewalk, and that's why she had to endure what she did. Her cool body language, standing there like that, smoking, looking unconcerned in a way. Her cool body language at least tried to convey that she was nonchalant about her public humiliation. When the judge reprimanded her for her resilience after the first day, so she had to stand there twice in a row for 1 hour per day. And after the first day, the judge intervened and said, "Hey, look, that's not an attitude not the right attitude that you display." She contended that she had learned her lesson, but was not broken. This may have had to do with an action of solidarity by a local reporter who stood next to her, holding the sign, "If she's an idiot, so am I." Not every shaming sanction is therefore effective and achieves its goal. Whether it actually triggers shame depends on whether the transgressor accepts its logic and moral economy. This, in turn, is more likely when the audience regards shaming as fair and deserved. In addition, it depends on the purpose that the punishment serves. If its aim is to give a deterrent example, then it hardly matters whether the delinquent is ashamed or not. If, however, its goal is improvement and social reintegration, as often the case since the late 18th century, the personal feelings of the transgressor are important. Excuse me for a second. It was with regard to those feelings that around 1800 a crucial transcoding took place. When the Kantian, doesn't say so here, but the Kantian Johann Adam Berg, a Kantian philosopher in Germany around the time, translated Cesare Beccaria's Crimes and Punishments into German in 1798 and extensively commented on the text. So you have the translation, which is about per page 3 lines, and then the annotations, the comments of Berg, of the translator, that fill about 3/4 of 1 page. That's the German style. So in his comments, he stated that shame sanctions that Cesare Beccaria had been not really explicit about, but Berg was explicit, and he stated that shame sanctions were completely inappropriate. The Prussian Grand Chancellor von Karma likewise regarded public shaming as a chief obstacle to any refinement of morality. Karma, Berg, and many others applied the rhetoric repertoire of moral and social progress that would benefit state and civil society alike. But they also tapped into the new discourse on human dignity. This marked a fundamental change of perspective that I've actually commented on earlier in my talk, away from the focus on state and society and towards the individual person and their protection against degradation. The idea of human dignity was expressed and shared more and more frequently from the early 19th century onwards, whenever contemporaries spoke out against shame sanctions. A Prussian legal report stated in 1818, quote, "Human dignity has to be respected, even that of the guilty, the criminal. Any punishment that destroys honor and degrades man to the level of an animal," and they thought about punishments that directly targeted the body, beatings, but also pillories, has to be dismissed. 1818. In a similar vein, the French Code Pénal of 1791, the Revolutionary Code, no longer allowed citizens to be publicly beaten as a penalty option. Public exposure was abolished in 1848 in France, as it was seen to diminish human dignity and impede the rehabilitation of offenders. 1 year later, in 1849, the Frankfurt Imperial Constitution declared the pillory, branding, and corporal punishment null and void. I always loved the way they printed those about the Constitution in 1849, the kind of biblical reference to the Ten Commandments, so to speak. Unfortunately, as we know, the Constitution did not enter into force in 1849, but its spirit permeated the new codes of criminal law. For example, the Prussian Code of 1841, which no longer mentioned the pillory or branding. Still, the story of deliberate public shaming, policy of or politics of humiliation, was not over. Admittedly, the state and criminal law essentially refrained from imposing humiliating punishments beyond the actual penalty. Liberalism generally meant a higher regard for individual honor and dignity, which were often used as synonyms, although they incidentally meant different things, honor and dignity. Authoritarian states, however, quickly dismantled such concerns and replaced them with a strong notion of community and feelings of class or race. We can see this in National Socialism, as well as in state socialist countries like the USSR or the GDR. During the Third Reich, the authorities tolerated and appreciated so-called shaming processions that put on public display those who had allegedly violated the newly installed racial norms. Women who had an affair with Jewish men, not the reverse, or during the war with a forced laborer or prisoner of war from occupied countries. Nazis also used this sanction against political opponents. Here, a case in the city of Essen, where they used, or they kind of targeted a Catholic politician from the Weimar Republic, the Center Party. Predominantly, though, Nazis targeted women, who had, as it was claimed, disgraced their own sexual honor as well as the honor of the national community. Concern for human dignity was quickly ignored, not just by Nazi thugs, but also by respected legal scholars who wrote about the subject. Such humiliating practices continued after the war in liberated countries like France or Norway. And you might know this, it's a famous photograph that Frank Capra took in 1945, August 1945, in the city of Chartres in France, where a woman had been shorn, her head had been shorn, and then together with her child that she had from a German soldier was paraded through the streets to the laughter and mockery and disdain of the whole citizens, of all citizens. Most, not all, but many citizens. And such practices also continued in newly occupied countries like Germany and Austria, where public shaming was enacted by citizens who took revenge and punished women for horizontal collaboration with the enemy, now of course the Americans.